like being a Republican today is kind of like being gay in the 80s. You speak in code, you have to meet in like private. You can't be outright about it because you're afraid of being like shunned from your family or like assaulted, and you're afraid you might lose access to housing and banking. It's wild. My wife and I were at like a food truck night at our local mall, and we saw this tall guy with like his Asian girlfriend, and he was wearing a hat, but he was wearing a hoodie around his face, almost like I don't know, like a burqa or something. And my wife actually walks in front of him and saw that she made him wrap his head because he was wearing a MAGA hat, and she was belittling him the entire time. So as we're walking away, my wife is pointing this out. She's like, she's being mean to him, and he paid for her dinner, and she's like, she's like insulting him right now. I'm like, oh, that sucks for him. Like, he should be a dude. But my wife went over to him and said, my husband and I have some Make Wisconsin Great Again hats and stuff like that, and you're safe here. And it's just like, when I heard that, I'm like, oh my God, this is like being gay in the 80s.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. Well, good morning and welcome to another week in review, part of the Brian Nichols Show. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you from our lovely Cardio Miracle Studios here in sunny Eastern Indiana. The Brian Nichols Show is powered by our phenomenal sponsors like AMP America and Cardio Miracle. I'll talk about AMP America more in a second, but first, Cardio Miracle. Yes, they are, in fact, the best heart health supplement in the world. Folks, if you're looking to lower your blood pressure, lower your resting heart rate, while at the same point in time improving your pump at the gym, improving those restless nights of sleep, don't take my word for it. Take the words of literally the tens of thousands of folks who are experiencing the Cardio Miracle difference for themselves. If you want to learn more, stick around. We're going to talk about Cardio Miracle later in today's episode. And yes, today is our AMP America Week in Review. The Brian Nichols Show is sponsored by AMP America. Very excited to have them as a sponsor here on the show. And folks, ampamerica.com. All the news you need to know without the corporate media bias and fluff. And with it being Friday, and yes, now Remso and I both having the chance to get back into office and do an episode today. We're doing our Week in Review live. So if you are joining us on Facebook or on X.com, let us know your thoughts. Join the conversation. Make sure you go ahead and reply in the video links. But with that being said, let's get Remso onto the show. Remso Martinez, nice face. Good to see you. Been a while. What's new, buddy?
The eyebrow of justice. The people's eyebrow, like The Rock.
The Rock.
Yeah, because I wore a black t-shirt. My wife was like, oh, you're trying to do the Dwayne Johnson? I was like, I don't think I look remotely like Dwayne Johnson, but I could do the eyebrow thing. So I wanted to try and seem cool for a second, but then you just ousted me, Brian. Let me see if it took a moment to get like into it. Like,
there it is.
I look retarded. No,
that's okay. Don't worry. Yeah. We all have our foibles. Remso, it's great to have you in the show, buddy. I've missed you. How you been? It's been a while since we connected.
Been good, been busy, been traveling. I went to my hometown, kind of unexpectedly last week. And when I tell people I'm from a small town in Arizona, I get people like in the Midwest who are like, oh yeah, I'm from a small town too. And I'm like, no, shut up. My town was so small that in 2000 we opened our first sit-down franchise restaurant. It was Chili's. Chili's was in the front page of our local newspaper for 3 days. We had the largest red ribbon ceremony for Chili's. In fact, we held a parade for Chili's. And I'm here to report that 20-something years later, the old men in town still love Chili's, and they all still remember how exciting it was when Chili's opened. I was talking to my father, and I'm like, Dad, people here are still like really into Chili's. Like, Chili's has a cult here. My dad is like, that Chili's ain't too bad. And I'm like, it's not that bad, but like, come on.
Is it that good?
That's questionable.
That's the question. Well, there's something about chain restaurants, and the boomers have this weird, just like infatuation. And I don't get it. Like my dad, big fan of Texas Roadhouse. Like
I don't like a lot of chain sit down places, except like I'll go to Olive Garden. My favorite is Carrabba's. I love.
I've never been to Carrabba's.
Carrabba's is You know what I call Carrabba's? I call Carrabba's Olive Garden without the crayons for kids and without the Andes mints at the end. It feels more like they're trying to be like an adult place because it's dark. Like Olive Garden is really well lit. Carrabba's is trying to make you feel like you're like in a mafia film. Carrabba's gives you the sliced bread because they're not trying to like, you know, feed you like the bread equivalent of French fries. Whereas, you know, Olive Garden is just like throwing breadsticks at you.
Salad, breadsticks, take it.
It's just, you know, it's too much. But the one I dislike the most is probably TGI Fridays. I've never liked TGI Fridays.
Yeah, I've only been there like once or twice.
I used to like Applebee's in like college because I went to Liberty and they had an Applebee's like on campus. So like I went there a couple of times. I actually took a date there one time, and obviously that was the only time she went out with me because I took her to Applebee's.
Remso's rolling out the red carpet, bringing his date to Applebee's.
Yeah, you know what? The first day I went on with my wife, I took her to buy one get one free Chipotle night. So you know,
hey, you do what you got to do.
Yeah, do what you got to do.
Burrito bowl it up.
Riz, you got to make it work, baby girl. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Speaking of Riz and making it work, let's segue into today's topic of conversation. And one guy who's been trying to make it work, and that is one RFK Jr. And Remso, for the past like year and a half, RFK has actually done a pretty good job at keeping his name top of mind. I call it political signage. He's stayed relevant in the political conversation, and he's been looking to possibly take votes from both Trump and Kamala Harris. And fast forward to today, actually, as we're recording here today, the rumor is that RFK might in fact go ahead and drop out. And if he were to drop out, there is in fact a report, and it comes more or less from the horse's mouth. His VP, Nicole Shanahan, she said, and I quote, "We're really considering a couple different options right now. First being, do we stick in the race to try and get that 5% ballot access? Because if they get 5%, then that creates an independent party that has ballot access going to 2028. Or do they address the elephant in the room and acknowledge the fact that if RFK stays in the race, that he is going to pull more votes from Trump than Biden, which could lead to, yes, Remso, a Kamala Harris, Tim Walz presidency, which it sounds like the RFK campaign is saying and acknowledging would be absolutely a worst case scenario, especially for America. So now the question, Remso, RFK drops out. If he does, in fact, endorse Trump, do those voters go Trump's way? Do they go Harris's way? Or do they just stay home and not vote at all? What say you? And give us a breakdown here of what's going on with RFK and the possible dropping out.
So as of this morning, Amp America piggybacked off of a breaking report from Jack Posobiec. And basically, RFK submitted paperwork yesterday dated August 22nd saying that he is officially withdrawing from the Arizona ballot, Arizona being one of the top battleground states in the nation.
And he just got removed from New York State's ballot as well.
And Pennsylvania, and they're suing him in Michigan for him to take on, like, overnight after the, I think it was New York Supreme Court. As soon as that New York case came in regarding his residency, because they're like, well, you need to be a resident in New York. And he's like, I pay taxes in New York. I have a driver's license in New York. I am a New York resident. They tried saying, well, you know, we dispute that because you have homes in Massachusetts and you have homes in California and everything. And he's just like, yeah, but I've done everything in New York forever. So, you know, he's at the point, Mike Cernovich brought it up. He's like, the amount of legal fees that he will have to pay for this alone is more so. I mean, it's hundreds of millions. Yep. It's hundreds of millions because you're looking at each state. You're looking at not just, you know, people think that it's the fees and stuff that gets you. It's the lawyer retainers. And the thing is that we can get these cases on a docket, but he might not even go to trial for it until like next year.
By the way, Remso, we need to really quickly call out who's bringing these cases against RFK. It's the Democratic establishment.
It's the Democrats.
Like, across the board. Like this. And this is the part that just drives me fucking crazy, is that you have Democrats who will be like, law and order, we nobody's above the law. And then they're like, let's think of ways to use the law to target people we don't like. And that's the part that just, it's very banana republic-y, like the fact that that's what we're seeing happen in America right now. And by the way, I think it does speak to why this is such a serious consideration for RFK and his team. Like, do we stick around and have millions of dollars of fees and time and energy spent trying to just get on a ballot? Or do we just say, fuck it, rip the Band-Aid off? Let's really focus on what our goal is here.
Yeah, notice this didn't happen until he secured Secret Service protection. And I say that primarily because the number one cost for RFK's campaign up until that point was security. He had to pay a private security firm. And I would argue that they were actually better than the Secret Service protection he's getting now, but that's a whole other thing. So, I mean, they lay it out in phases.
Ask his dad.
Kind of like
his uncle.
kind of like that got me for a second. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's true. But no, I mean, they roll it out in phases. Okay, he succeeded this one, lay this down. I mean, it's at a point now where I almost like I follow a lot of folks on what I would call like RFKX. And a lot of them, while they were definitely like huge critics of Trump. They almost see Trump in a way as like a kindred spirit because of the persecution that he's dealt with. No one other than Trump, and Trump to a much larger scale, because they tried to put him in prison. Then, somebody tried to kill him. And as of yesterday, somebody else tried to kill him. It's, it's a situation where they see this and they see it for what it is.
Yep.
I mean, this is going back. I mean, people need to remember, like, up until a year ago, he was running in what was supposed to be a Democratic primary. And the 10 minutes of the
people fucking forget that RFK was running as a Democrat.
Yeah,
as a Democrat.
It was not that long ago.
He's this election's Tulsi Gabbard, more or less.
I'd say he's managed to go farther because he's to spoil for both. But with this, it's one of those situations where he got along. I mean, you've got a lot of folks on our team who like really don't like RFK, and they bring up the stuff that he's done in the past, and like I've never not known that about him, but you could tell a lot about a person by the people that go after him. And since 2020, I mean, there's just they've pulled their knives out and there's blood in the water, and they've done everything they could to besmirch him. I mean, up until like June, they tried to throw like a sexual assault case on him from like when he was 20 and stuff like that. So, I mean, the man who was, anti-gun, voted for Obama, liked the idea of a Green New Deal in the 2000s and stuff like that. Like, I would not say that's the same person we're dealing with right now, much like Trump. Trump, when Trump first announced he was running in 2015, I was like, you mean the guy that helped fund Terry McAuliffe to become governor in Virginia? And it was because why? His vested interest, the Trump golf course, Trump wineries in Charlottesville, Virginia. Is that the same person that was president? Is that the same person we got now? Absolutely not. So it's one of the situations where it's like you can linger on that, but look at how people are right now. Look at the battles they're fighting. You don't ever look at just what people say. Look at who's fighting them, because that tells you exactly who they are by the people that go after them. And right now, Trump and RFK have the exact same enemies. It's not just the Democratic Party; it's the entire deep state apparatus. And, I was kind of on board with the idea of like, maybe he kind of stays in. But, even last month when Biden dropped out and people were saying, well, RFK is going to go to the DNC and he's going to try and, get the nomination, at least for some publicity points. He didn't. He was like, I'm not doing that. Like, why? Those people screwed me over. And he's not, was not super kind to Trump about that. But at the end of the day, it's like, look at what will happen if Harris is president. It's bad. And people need to understand, like, Harris is so radical. She makes Barack Obama look like Ron Paul. Okay? I say that very deliberately. She is so radical. So radical. This is just not the same. This entire cycle is not the same. And you get the people who are like, well, I've heard the most important election of my lifetime shit. It's like, yeah, and it was never real until now. Mm. And we had Hillary to deal with 8 years ago. Like, this is.
By the way, Remso, I want to call out one thing too. Patrick Bet-David's show, I listened to that quite a bit, and they were talking about this kind of in some detail on, I think it was earlier this week's episode. But one of the things that PBD brought up was that Let's look at the outcomes of this election, right? Harris wins. That's 4 years of another Harris Biden administration. Let's just carry it through. So what we've seen over the past 4 years, I would say pedal to the metal, because Kamala Harris's brain isn't mashed potatoes. So that's going to be a huge benefit in that standpoint. Fast forward, what's going to happen? How many Supreme Court seats do we think might pop open over the next couple years? I mean, 2, 3. Let's see. We got Clarence Thomas, Kennedy. Who else? Or not Kennedy. What's his name? He's gone. Anthony Kennedy's gone.
Oh, yeah, he left.
Yeah, Clarence Thomas, the lady, Sonia Sotomayor, she's probably going to bounce at some point because she's getting up there in age. I mean, who else? You got Alito. You got...
it's not just replacing court justices. She will stack the court. She
1,000%.
Yeah, she will absolutely stack the court. And America will never look the same again.
And by the way, and folks, by the way, Brian Nichols here and Remso Martinez, we're live on AMP America's Week in Review. This goes into actually a perfect segue, Remso. I'm going to go ahead and bring up our next article that our good buddy Austin Peterson wrote over on AMP America. And that is this idea that you're seeing right now, Democrats leading with this moderate perception, right, of go to market. And this is in my business speak, right? So they're going to market, selling themselves as moderate, independent, middle of the road centrists. Where in reality, and to Austin's article here, they are more or less just socialists in moderate clothing. Kind of give us an overview here, Remso, of Austin's article. And what do you think that this is going to do in terms of actually securing moderate voters? Hey, folks, I want to take a moment to talk about something that has truly changed my life, and that is Cardio Miracle, our incredible studio sponsor. Now, I'll be honest, when I first heard about Cardio Miracle and their claims about improving heart health, I was skeptical. But after using it for just about 2 months, I was absolutely blown away by the results. First, my blood pressure went from being consistently around 140/90 to a much more healthier and manageable 120/80. And my resting heart rate dropped from the low 70s to the high 50s. And I couldn't believe it. But the benefits didn't stop there. I started sleeping better. And I felt more energized at the gym, and my heart felt the best it's felt in years. And it's not just me. Hundreds of you, our amazing listeners, have reached out to share your own incredible experiences with Cardio Miracle. So, what is Cardio Miracle? And how does it work? It's a carefully crafted supplement that harnesses the power of nitric oxide to support optimal heart function. So by increasing nitric oxide levels in your blood, Cardio Miracle helps relax your blood vessels, improve circulation, and it protects your heart from damage. It's like giving your heart the support it needs to function at its best. And here's the best part. We've got an exclusive offer just for you, our loyal listeners here at the Brian Nichols Show. When you head over to cardiomiracle.com and use code TBNS at checkout, you'll get an extra 15% discount on your order. Plus, with their 100% money-back guarantee, you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. So, if you're ready to take control of your heart health and experience the life-changing benefits of Cardio Miracle for yourself, just click the link in the show notes or video description. Trust me, your heart will thank you. And don't wait another day to prioritize your health. Join the tens of thousands of folks who have already discovered the Cardio Miracle difference. Head to cardiomiracle.com now and use code TBNS for 15% off your order. Your journey to a happier and healthier heart starts today. And now, let's get back to the show.
You know, in every primary, you know, what you want to do is you want to win the nomination. You're not so much focused on the general election, which is why so many campaigns switch staff. So somebody who runs to the right during the primaries to secure the base, the most dedicated people who are actually going to show up for caucus day and conventions and the open primaries and stuff, you run to the right or you run to the left. And then what you do during the general election is you convince half of America that you weren't actually serious about the things you say. The thing about Harris, though, and this is actually to her detriment, is that because she is the nominee so far late in the race, she's trying as hard as possible to memory hole people into thinking that she didn't just run for president 4 years ago, running on a campaign where she literally called Joe Biden a segregationist, and that she has not been the border czar. She has not been the vice president for 4 years. She's basically saying that was just me occupying space, and now I get to do all the things I want.
Which, by the way, That's Kamala Harris to a T, just occupying space.
just occupying space. And
just ask Montel Williams. He really appreciated that.
Well, Willie Brown really occupied space in her for like a decade.
Sure did. And he regrets it sounds. Yeah.
Yeah. But, now what we're seeing with the addition of Walz is that they're trying to go for like, this like Hoosiers dad coach type of vibe. Like they're calling him like Coach Walz and all this stuff. The man is a stolen valor. The man has, repeatedly shown that he is a radical communist. Like that's not even hyperbole. A bunch of school children asked him, I think 4 years ago, and it's in a local paper up in Minnesota where, that was my Wisconsin accent finally like breaking. Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota. And he was just like, well, so communism is when everyone is equal and everyone shares. And it's like, okay, Mal, I know you went to China like a dozen times in the 90s.
Wasn't he on that that Kamala Harris white dude struggle session Zoom call where he was like, and don't you dare get upset and worried about communism or socialism. Your socialism is your neighbor's your neighbor's kindliness or neighborliness. It's like, my brother, no, absolutely not. There's a very big difference between being a neighbor and doing kindness and helping your neighbor, lending a helping hand.
Mr. Rogers never held a gun to anyone or tried to get them arrested.
Exactly. Like there is a very big difference when using the force of government at the threat of violence, or in this case, at the end of a gun, to say, hey, we're gonna make sure you're a really good neighbor. Do it. Yeah. Do it. Be a good neighbor. Like,
will you be my neighbor?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, now they're trying to, somebody said, they know that they really can't convince, like working class white men to support Harris. So they're trying to go for like lower testosterone men. And it's just
Didn't they much acknowledge that too? They were like, they're using the wall approach to get the more masculine men.
Yeah, and they failed at that because, you can't just put camo on a hat and expect people to jump for that. I mean, they're trying as hard as possible. I mean, Harris the other night when Michelle Obama came to speak wasn't even at the convention in Chicago. She drove up to Wisconsin, 45 minutes north, and she campaigned here like yesterday. And it's like they are struggling so much. Their ground game. People are saying, oh, Trump's not in certain states. Trump's not doing X, Y, and Z. Trump is actually, like, give him credit. And it's always people that just want to spend money. Trump runs probably the most cost-effective campaigns in history. Yeah, they're the most expensive campaigns in history, given the climate and given what the competition is. But cost-wise, he's not wasting money. And he's been in these battleground states for 2 years. And Harris has to convince these people to give money that they really don't have. But that's the crazy thing about all of it, though. I grew up in Fairfax County, Virginia, for about 10 years. And my county had the highest concentration of people that went ahead and maxed out donations to Hillary Clinton in 2016 and maxed out donations to Joe Biden in 2020. And it's one of those situations where it's like, don't think that because she's not getting the rally size that she's not getting the money and that they won't show up to vote. I am one of those voters who just registered to vote. I still have to turn in my form to vote here in Wisconsin because I did not think that the Republicans had remotely done anything positive for me the last 4 years. They failed on COVID. They failed on the lockdowns. They failed on inflation. They failed on Afghanistan. They go ahead and they focused on Hunter Biden. But meanwhile, I'm talking to people and I'm like, do you understand what Hunter Biden did? And they're like, all Republicans cared about was the gun and cocaine. I'm like, no, what they cared about was the ties to the Communist Party of China, was the ties to Burisma in Ukraine, were the ties to all these other money laundering and pay-to-play schemes in which the president of the United States was treating the federal government like a crime syndicate. And they're just like, well, all I see is Republicans going after his drugs and hookers. And I'm like, yeah, actually, you know what? Why? Because that's all they focused on. So Donald Trump has shown that, and kind of tying in the last bit together, you look at the enemies that these people have. And everything that I've seen from the DNC remotely is that middle America is the enemy of the people. Middle Americans are working. They're with their families. They're not watching the DNC. So they're the Harris campaign in Austin's piece, it's like, they're trying really hard to try and make you forget that they are what they are. But we've seen who they are and we know who they are. And that's the biggest deception that they're trying to pull over people's eyes. And sadly, I'm still meeting people and I'm still seeing people. I watch one of those YouTube shows where a guy goes and interviews rich people and asks them how they made their money and stuff. And he was asking people who they voted for. And almost every person, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, they were all like, I'm voting for Trump because our economy is shit. And, we need to be able to work and stuff. And not to point it out, but like you had a black guy, a very wealthy, successful man who should be proud of his wealth and probably does good for himself in his community, was like, I'm voting for Harris because she's black. You got to support your own. Direct quote. And it's like, okay, you apply that to anybody else, and that's called a racist. That's called racial supremacy. That's what is it? You're only voting for somebody based off their black. Kamala's not black.
Remso's like, I'm going to rip this Band-Aid off.
Kamala's not black. Okay. You know why? Because I know enough black people who say it's not enough to be black to be black. Black culture is a thing. And Kamala's not black. Okay. It's like if I went around going and calling my business a Latino-owned business. You think Latinos are going to take me seriously? I don't speak Spanish. Okay.
But your last name is Martinez.
Yeah, but I sound like Richard from the suburbs, not Jose from the barrio. It's more than just that. And that's a whole other topic.
Do you spend time out back behind Home Depot looking for work, Remso?
Brian, I could not hammer in a nail if I wanted to.
Soy bueno worker? Trabajo?
Okay. I went to Home Depot last week to buy a whole bunch of bottles of water for my grandmother's ranch house.
And you got recruited to do some work, didn't you?
No, but I got stares when I asked where the bottled water was. And they were just like, you should know. Then they took a look at me and they're like, oh, no, sir, it's near checkout. Because they heard me and they looked at me for 2 seconds and they're like,
he's not one of the real ones. Okay.
No. He's here to hire, not here to,
be hired.
Be hired.
So I just want to go back to a few things you said there, Remso. First and foremost, you're spot on, right?
Episode that you've ever done.
Oh, this is a blast.
I'm so disappointed in you.
So when we talk about, and I've used to teach this a lot on the show. I actually think it's something I brought up on Tim Pool's show back when I was on there a couple years ago. We have to stop reacting to narratives and start setting narratives, right? So this is common right now, and this is just in general. Republicans, conservatives, libertarians, they will see some outlandish claim made by the left, by the Democrats, by the socialists, whatever it may be. They make a crazy claim, and Republicans are like, "That's not us." What? And then they're explaining away like why that's wrong. And of course, when you're explaining, you're losing, right? So what's happening is they are now trying to recorrect that narrative versus Republicans, conservatives, libertarians. Start fucking hitting it. Like, you hit the narrative. As soon as you want to get the narrative out there, start bringing it out there. And one person, by the way, I do want to give a shout out to is our good mutual friend, Josie, the redheaded libertarian. She had shared this over on X, and it had over 128,000 likes because she's very good at setting narratives. And she said, Tim Walz does remind me of someone. Who is that?
Oh my gosh.
So for the folks watching at home, if you've ever watched Schitt's Creek, I forget the guy's name, but he's the very effeminate Midwestern guy that's in Schitt's Creek, and it's literally Tim Walz to a T. But like that right there, Remso, right? Like, set that as the narrative for Tim Walz, not the Coach Walz that they're trying to lead with this. Oh, you want the goofy dude from Schitt's Creek being
Swig
your VP?
From Old Row went ahead and showed Waltz's entrance the other night, and he was like, it's a lot more entertaining if you put "It's Raining Men" behind it.
Brian Nichols, Remso Martinez here on our Amp America Week in Review. We're talking all things that happened the past week. DNC, Democrats strategy. And by the way, Remso, as we're kind of going towards the end of the episode today, let's go towards one of the other articles that bookends the DNC. And that is, you go out, we're talking to all these folks at the DNC. Man, they look excited. They look like they are ready to have a good time, go and vote for Kamala Harris. And, they must be really passionate. They must know all about what Kamala Harris stands for, what Tim Walz stands for, except when you go ahead and actually start asking them some questions, like, hey, why do you like Kamala Harris? Policy, like, let's talk about that. I like her as a person. So this is where we are, Remso. A lot of Democrats, when they're actually pressed on this.
Scroll up real fast. How did Fox News frame this? Her as a person just like tops out any policy. A young blonde woman said. When was the last time you saw anything where a black person supports Trump and then they're just like a black person? They don't even talk about it. They don't.
Yeah, a young black woman with dreads. Could you imagine? If that was the headline or the subheadline?
Do you remember, like, it was like last week you had that Chick-fil-A manager in Atlanta, that, like, tall, really pretty black woman who Trump was like, yeah, she started like making out with me, and I was like, I'm gonna run away with you. Like, I was like, she should be on like Fox like every week. But Fox is part of the Empire media. I don't even call it the legacy media. It's the Empire media. The Empire's only interest is in protecting itself. And it's like, they'll say, oh, a young blonde woman said she likes, potential not black president. But it's like, you have this woman who's like a legit person in her community, like a real human being we could probably find information on. And she's been nowhere since. It's just, I find that so funny. It's trying to paint this narrative that's like, well, white people, what's wrong with you if you don't like Kamala? I say this as a not white person. Like, I feel like a racial exorcist sometimes. I'm just like, you're not racist, okay? Like, you're being gaslit into literal suppression and authoritarianism. Like, what's going on, people?
So here's where I get stuck, Remso, because we need to identify Harris's policies and make sure that, as we talked about before, we're the ones setting the narratives. And I think we're doing a pretty good job, especially here on the Brian Nichols Show and part of AMP America. But when you look at Kamala Harris and the vibes, right, the joy that she's bringing to the election, that is the campaign. The campaign is all bundled up around emotion. And we know in sales, emotion sells. So I'm worried, Remso, that Republicans, conservatives, and I'll label in some libertarians, that they get stuck in explaining and logic and reasoning the why she sucks without acknowledging the emotional triggers that will get people to buy, or in this case, to vote for Kamala. So what could we do differently to help lead with emotion, right? To get people to change their perspective with that emotional trigger, but to do so where we're not pissing on people's Cheerios, right? We're painting a positive picture. What can Republicans do? Because, by the way, the biggest red flag for any moderate or left-leaning voter in considering voting for a Republican is Trump himself, because Trump has the baggage of either people love him or they fucking hate him. So what can Republicans, conservatives, libertarians do to lead with a positive message, hit those emotional triggers, and counter the emotional joy and what Mamala energy that she's trying to bring to this campaign? What does that look like? Does it look like anything? Is it possible, Remso?
Fear
will keep them in line.
Fear, because, and I say this, I think I have more credibility than a lot of people because I've got like a decade's worth of my voice and my face out there being wrong. But I say this as a person who was not a Trump supporter in 2016. I say this as a person who only voted for Trump in 2020. And I say this as a person who, up until like when they tried to literally stick him in jail, was probably going to vote for RFK.
Yep.
I say, look at what, and this is the big divorce, and this is where people just completely separate out what their eyes see versus what they feel. Everything they have ever accused Trump of, they've done themselves. And this is my advice to the RNC. If they want to start, blasting advertising out there, show everything they accuse Trump of. Trump's going to start a civil war. Show Kamala fundraising for rioters. Show Tim Walz not deploying the National Guard as they were burning down Minneapolis.
And having people like his law enforcement officers using paintball guns to enforce COVID restrictions by shooting people who were on their front porches while the Leos are walking through residential Minneapolis. Like, that part is just dystopian.
There's a reason why we're not allowed to talk about the 500,000 Russian and Ukrainian men who died, because if people actually saw the fact that 500,000 people have died in the war in Ukraine, the Ukrainian meat grinder, they'd be like, okay, like Ukraine's got to stop. Like, this whole thing is just like, it's not worth more people like exterminating the entire populations of both countries.
Let me challenge you on that, Remso, because dude, like, do you really genuinely, like, do you think that they'll let the visual of 500,000 men who were just murdered because of nonsense, will that be enough to outsway the machine? Like, they've been, think about the
I would
person.
I would
put your black square on Facebook. Yeah. Make sure you put your Ukrainian flag on Facebook. Like, that's the person that we're dealing with. Like, take out today's agenda, put in tomorrow's agenda, move forward, NPC, beep, bop, boop. Like, do you think that that's enough to break that programming?
I think if you show dead bodies, yeah.
Okay.
I would put Kamala's laughing behind it. And it's like, they kept saying that Trump would cause World War III. It's like, we had no wars of Trump. We kept Iran in its place. Iran was bankrupt. We completely obliterated ISIS. North Korea wanted to speak on friendly terms with us. Like, just the war, just, the civil stuff in America, the economy. It's like they had 4 years to do it. And everything that they accused Trump of are the things that they have done.
Fucking on.
Yeah, yes. They're like he will weaponize the government. It's like, really? Who just tried to spend like taxpayer resources to go after all of his associates, to go after Yeah, they still are.
Fucking are.
It's not going to end. And, they're going to do what they did in 2017, 2018. Their big thing is obstruction. And, I was meeting with a local business owner, and we were kind of wargaming, like what we see the economy being like under Trump and Kamala. And I said, we're not really going to see, hopefully Trump wins, which he wants to. And I was like, hopefully, after 2 years of just blatant obstruction, he just gets belligerent about it and just starts running things his way with some good governors. And we can actually start seeing some economic drivers. But, I would just say it's like, okay, Democrats, you actually have to provide a real answer beyond just feels and beyond just, well, I like her. And I don't know, but go out and vote. I saw Angel Reese the other day, and people are going after her because she refused to endorse Kamala.
By the way, Angel Reese, for those playing along in the home game who didn't know the WNBA existed until this past year, she was she's the black girl from the NCAA who went to, I forget which,
Louisiana.
So she and Caitlin Clark, they were battling back and forth during college. Now they're in the WNBA together. But anyway, she's a rising star, and she's one of the folks making the WNBA.
Like, Angel Reese is my favorite, but to watch. But like she was just like, well, I'm not too educated on that stuff, but go out and vote. It's like that was actually a very smart answer of hers, because she's like,
good for her.
She actually. When they won the NCAA championship, and Jill Biden invited the losers to the White House too, when it was always historically the winners, Angel Reese was like, "Oh, what? You couldn't have the all black team there, so you had to invite the losing all white team." And she went after them, and people went after her, and then they were like, "What do you think about Biden?" And she's
good
like,
for her. Good for her, because like
Angel Reese is a honey badger. Like, people are like, blah, 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 but I'm like, I'm an Angel Reese fan.
See, and that just made me like much more respect her game, both on the court and off, Remso, because at the end of the day, what would have been the easy thing for her to do? The easy thing would have been the reporter comes up, "Hey, Angel, who are you voting for?" Instead of saying, "Oh, I'm not that educated on it. I got to do some research, go vote." The person could have pushed her back and said, "Oh, well, come on, Angel, you going to support Kamala, have the first black woman go into the White House?" And she could have been like, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, I could support that." Like, that could have been the easiest path to go down, because at the end of the day, that's where the media wants it to go. They want to keep playing this emotional, racial, divisive game. And by the way, I think we talked about this last week in the review, Remso. This is the old Obama playbook, right? Like, take individuals and break them into these sub little groups, make you feel that you are no longer you as a person, but now you are this collective group. So if you're a black woman, guess what? You're going to be voting with the black women group. If you're a white dude, we don't want your vote because you're voting with the white dude votes until we do, because we realize all of a sudden maybe Kamala Harris needs white dudes to win. But let's go ahead and do a video chat. Call it White Guys for Harris and just put a nice big B there for betas.
There was so much estrogen in that Zoom room.
what was that guy's name? He did the oh shit. I can't remember the channel. True TV. Adam ruins everything. Fucking Adam Conover.
Adam Conover.
That dude has so much estrogen just pouring out of his pores. There was that one episode he was on Joe Rogan, and Rogan just, doing the great Socratic method, just asking follow-up questions. Tell me why you think this.
Conover did not state that there was a physical difference between men and women.
It was something around like men or women changing sexes, I believe. And like, you could just see the shit. I'm caught in a logical. It was the Kathy Newman. You got me right there. And he's like, oh, gotcha. Like that's what it felt like. But it's folks like that I look at. And by the way, I know I'm taking a little bit of a hard turn here away from talking about the Obama playbook, but like it's folks like Adam Conover that Remso, I don't know. How do we deal with that type of persona perception? Like, because they do have
Adam Conover convinces you to vote for Kamala Harris, you didn't need much convincing to begin with. And you see by who people freak out about, which is why when Rogan had to kind of walk back when Joe Rogan was like, I didn't endorse RFK, which I almost say like you have, and you've been doing so for the past year. You might as well double down. It's like, I don't care, Joe Rogan. like you support who you want, but there's
fear. What is it with the fear, man? Like it still exists today. I thought that we were over that, like the cancel culture mentality.
Being a Republican today is kind of like being gay in the 80s. You speak in code. You have to meet in like private. You can't be outright about it because you're afraid of being like shunned from your family or like assaulted, and you're afraid you might lose access to housing and banking. It's wild. My wife and I were at like a food truck night at our local mall, and we saw this tall guy with like his Asian girlfriend, and he was wearing a hat, but he was wearing a hoodie around his face, almost like I don't know, like a burqa or something. And my wife actually walks in front of him and saw that she made him wrap his head because he was wearing a MAGA hat, and she was belittling him the entire time. So as we're walking away, my wife is pointing this out. She's like, she's being mean to him, and he paid for her dinner. And she's like, she's like insulting him right now. I'm like, oh, that sucks for him. Like he should be a dude. But my wife went over to him and said, my husband and I have some Make Wisconsin Great Again hats and stuff like that, and you're safe here. And it's just like, when I heard that, I'm like, oh my God, this is like being gay in the 80s.
I wanted to hear where that was going to go, being gay in the 80s. I'm glad you were able to paint that picture, Remso, because only you could do that and make it sound as good as you did.
I wore a MAGA hat to Costco the other day, and I just kind of get these looks from people like, yeah.
Hey everyone, Brian Nichols here with an incredible opportunity for you. The Expat Money Summit, which is the world's premier offshore event, is happening online from October 7th to October 11th. So whether you're just starting to explore international options or you're a seasoned expat, this summit has something for you. With over 40 speakers, including Dr. Ron Paul, Doug Casey, and more, you'll gain the knowledge and strategies to navigate the complex world of internationalization with confidence. And it's completely free to attend. Just visit expatmoneysummit.com to reserve your complimentary ticket. Don't miss this chance to learn how to secure your freedom and wealth abroad. One more time, expatmoneysummit.com. And now, back to the show.
Well, so I went to a partner event. So I'm in my business world. There's all these folks that are like helping do networking and building relationships. And you're fucking spot on. Like so I was at a booth. We had there's a professional headshots booth. So we literally were at the front of the conference. Everybody saw us and they'd come in because they want to get their professional headshots taken. So you'd have them come to the booth and you start talking. And just as things would progress in conversation, naturally current events would come up. And you could almost feel like, okay, tension, because you don't know where this is going to go yet. And you could almost see as soon as I was like, I would drop something that would hint that I'm not a crazy lefty, you could just feel their posture just like just this relaxation. And then they would open up, dude. I had this one guy who was like, dude, oh my God, I think I saw you on Tim Pool. I didn't know if I should say it or not. And then like, just like that kind of energy comes out. And I'm like, be this all the time. If you lead with the energy and the enthusiasm that you have without the fear to start, you're gonna inspire and excite so many other folks to do the same. Like and by the way, this is my final thought, and I'll turn things over to you, Remso. Like I've gotten shit for 7 years since I've been doing this show. Like Brian's way too happy. Brian's got way too much energy. I'm sorry. That's just who I am. And I'm fucking passionate about this stuff because I see the value. Like I used to be a big fat fuck. I was almost 400.
When you and I were back at We Are Libertarians together, somebody was like, Brian, actually, I feel excited to listen to him. On the Run makes me want to kill myself. I have the text message too somewhere, and I did not respond. I was like, I was having a conversation with somebody, and I was just like, I didn't respond to that. I was just like, how do I respond?
I'm sorry. Sorry for that. But like, dude,
he's wearing bright colors. I'm still wearing black.
Well, that's because you're doing you're channeling your inner Dwayne Johnson. That's why. But like, dude, I used to weigh 400 pounds. I used to drink the Kool-Aid of like, oh, you just gotta just be a little pussy. Like that's kind of the mentality I had. I was a borderline beta bitch, because that's what I thought society wanted from men, right? And like then when I started to really embrace not just the ideas of liberty, but like really start to focus on my why and understanding the value of meritocracy and understanding the value.
Eggs and red meat are good.
And that's why I'm strong now. Because I used to be just big, fat, flubby Brian. And now I'm strong. I like to go to the gym, Brian. And like, for me to see the value myself, right? I want to celebrate that. I want to promote the fuck out of that because ideas are contagious. And when you're able, and by the way, in sales, I teach this to my sales teams. When you're selling something, you're not just selling the product. You're transferring the enthusiasm that you have for your product, for your service, to your customer. And if you're not able to transfer that enthusiasm, then there's no sale being made. Like they might buy the product, but they're not buying into the solution, if you know what I mean, right? So in that spirit, I bring energy to this show and to the movement because I see the value, but also sometimes my energy turns into frustration and folks in the just peek behind the curtain. I'm still in part of the We Are Libertarians Facebook group that they have there, which by the way, go join because I like to just toss some grenades and walk away. But like, I like to challenge with energy.
I just kind of watch and I'm just like,
Brian's doing his thing again. But it needs to happen, Remso, because if you get into this kind of like, again, this beta bitch mentality, like you're going to get stuck in that mentality. I want people to get excited about what the value and what the outcomes look like from a true liberty perspective, but also not to do so in, pardon the expression, a just completely autistic way. So yes, libertarians, I am energetic. I love this shit. And yes, I am going to challenge you because I know what works and I see what works. And by the way, we look at the other two parties and we see them having success despite them having fucking shitty ideas. That's the part. The liberty value is so beautiful. Like we know it wins. We know it works, but we lose. That means that it's not the product. It's our sales. It's our messaging that sucks. So if we can improve that, by the nature that our product is inherently better, we know it's going to work, but we had to be better at selling it. So I'll get off my soapbox because fuck, I'm getting upset and excited at the same time. That's a weird combo. But like we really need to
angry and horny at the same time.
That would make up some really interesting sex.
Am I the only one that's ever felt like that? Don't comment.
No, not when we're together.
No, that's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other thing. On that happy note, very happy note, Remso, what are your
guys for wall? What guys?
Running in.
Did you see that movie with John Cena, Ricky Stenicki, and they're making fun of William H. Macy as who's a business owner at a conference?
Yes.
He's doing that. He's air dicking everybody.
By the way, my daughter got a fucking stain in my shirt. I just noticed that during the live stream. I was like, "What's on my shirt?" And it's my daughter's. Like, thanks, Lily. Kids, what's your final thoughts, Remso? Wrap us up. I know you got a meeting here in a little bit.
I don't even know where to follow with that. Like, Kamala Harris ain't black.
There we go. All right. On that happy note, Remso, where can folks go ahead, find you, support AMP America, all that fun stuff?
AMP America News on X. Just go ahead and search AMP America, and you can go ahead and follow me and argue about, I don't know, whatever. Hey, Remso, that's HEYREMSO.
And if you will go on Instagram, it's Remso. That's right, GOREMSO. I will make sure I include all those links in the show notes. I've been seeing folks popping in and out here in the live stream on Twitter and over on Facebook. Thank you for joining us, folks. Yes, you can always go ahead and, well, I say always, unless Remso and I are traveling. Check us out on Friday mornings. We're looking to have these episodes air around 10 a.m. or so live. If you get some value, please let us know. Go ahead, email me, Brian at briannicholsshow.com. By the way, you want to learn more about Kamala Harris's just absolutely terrifying policies. I did a few Brian's briefings over the past couple of weeks, digging into that and more. We talk about price controls in the grocery store. What are the impacts there? Also, unrealized gains. Is Kamala Harris going to tax that? And if so, what would that actually look like? I cover both of those topics. The unrealized gains episode is actually coming out tomorrow, so Saturday, for the folks playing along in the home game right now, as we're live today on Friday. And then for the other episode, the price controls, that aired back on Tuesday. So go ahead, check that episode out. It's a good 10 minutes or so, quick, concise, and I dare say to the point. So please go ahead, check those out. Give me a shout. Let me know your thoughts. Email me, Brian at briannicholsshow.com. Tag yours truly on Twitter, Facebook at @BNicholsLiberty. And for the show, you can find us on your favorite podcast catching apps. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music for the actual video version of the show. Because yes, Remso and I are here on a live stream on our Friday morning. You can check us out on Facebook and Twitter when we go live, or you can check out the episode and it's I guess it's post review on Friday evenings on YouTube and on Rumble. There we go. So you can find those at 6:30 p.m. this evening. And one final plug, Remso, you know what it is. Please support the folks who support us, like our phenomenal sponsors, AMP America, Cardio Miracle. Plus, we have some awesome other folks like Expat, Expat Money Summit, which is coming up here in about a month or so. And by the way, I know I'm really excited.
Sooner than later.
That's right. Yeah. So go ahead, check that out if you're getting tired of how things are going in America and you're like, hey, maybe Panama looks pretty good. Or maybe, we didn't get to this article, but maybe going down to Bukele's, where is that? El Salvador? Yeah, El Salvador.
Brazil. Man, if I were single and I was in Brazil, I'd come back with a black belt.
Gunshot in your head?
Well, I mean, like a BJJ black belt and maybe an STD because, I've got a weakness.
BJJ and BJ.
Yeah, both. Yeah.
On that note, Brian Nichols signing off here for Remso Martinez, part of our AMP America Week in Review. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.